Hey, good
brilliant.
afternoon. Hey,
I love
Brody,
that
we
intro.
don't, I think you're working on another meme.
That's great. Make a meme out of the Winnipeg Jets taking down the #1 seed Vegas Golden Knights in Game 1, dominating performance. You can meme the crap out of me, everybody. Internet, go ahead and meme this logo right here.
I don't
See this
think
logo?
that's. I don't think you really want to use that phrase. Please meme the crap out of me. I don't know.
Meme the crap.
Yeah, you don't want that.
I've said worse things.
Well, whatever. You can tell Ed's starving today. I'm actually eating on the show. So, recorded April 19th, 2023. Good afternoon, Brody. Good afternoon, Rod. Good afternoon, Ant. Well, we're missing someone.
Oh my goodness. Did we forget? Did we forget to tell her that we were doing a show tonight?
Yeah, she's not part of the cool crew anymore.
Oh.
So she had to go, right? Brody, what's up, man? How you doing?
What's up? I got no sleep last night because I was watching the Jets game. The Jets dominated last night. I loved it. Play again tomorrow. I like our chances. I like our chances this series. It's going to be great.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'm having the time of my life. Like, I'm just so happy right now. Last night was, especially the other Canadian teams lost in terrible fashion. So I get to brag to all my friends, all my Edmonton friends and my Toronto friends. They were all grumpy, and I'm living on cloud 9 right now. Things are great. Couldn't be happier. Oh, you got to talk about work? Security, right? It's a security podcast / experience. What's going on? I'm going to be working with what's going on, Brody? What are you even doing? Doing some purview governance stuff ongoing. It's it's new to me. It's not the most exciting thing, but it's important. It's important to know where your sensitive information is and structured data sets. And one day when we get that working for this customer, it will be great to know how that all goes down. And then another customer, we were going to hook up their Google workspace environment to Noodle, watch your language, their Google workspace environment to Defender for Cloud Apps. And so we set up some trial accounts. We got all that set up. And then customer pulled the plug, like, we can't do it now because Google Team's worried about this, that, the other thing. So
what are they worried about? All you're doing is an API call to look at.
Edward, it's politics. It's just politics.
Is that what you and I were talking about?
Yeah. And I was basically asking you because my curious part is sure, we want to look for sensitive information on like Google Drive. We want to look for malicious activity, impossible travel, that type of thing. That's all accomplishable with just the API connector. But then they want to take it one step further and they're like, okay, well, what about if we're like transmitting data to and from other SaaS apps from Google Drive? Do we need to onboard those apps into Defender for Cloud Apps as well? Or because one of the repositories is onboarded, aka Google Drive, we would be able to see that transmission of data, uploads and downloads. That's the part I never got to answer yet because we never got far enough in, and now we're kind of pulling the plug. So,
well, the answer is yes. So what happens is when you put in a session control of a sort, or you just go into the application that's discovered, and you click on monitor, it creates a custom detection in MDE, and that's how you see it. And that's where it can differentiate between the URLs and the APIs. Remember when I said when you go in there, you're going to discover not just Google Drive, a bunch of Google things, workspace, G-Space, whatever space. And so you can monitor those individual apps. But when you do it, if you wait about 15 minutes, go to MDE portal, go look in the custom detections, and you'll see it.
Okay, copy that.
Yep.
Copy that. Have you ever worked with a customer who doesn't use Defender for Endpoint and it's just the firewall ingestion logs for the detection and logging mechanism? That seems like a huge pain in the ass, like comparatively.
That was when I was just deep into MCAS, Defender for Cloud Apps. That was the workaround because natively the Windows 10 endpoints did not send telemetry into that. Yeah. So, they brought that in. Well, I got the question wrong. Let me go back. They realized the diminishing value and return on investment by capturing firewall logs, which was exacerbated by a forced hybrid model globally by something called COVID-19. Ever heard of it? And so now pulling in firewall logs are essentially useless because everybody's house is now the premise. Right. And then you got these smart kids in K-12 VPNing and just driving MCAS crazy. right?
Right. Okay.
Then that led to just saying, hey, we'll put it on the endpoints,
Right. Right.
right? Because the traditional go into the office and sit down, we'll get back to that in some form or fashion, but the
Maybe.
world cannot go back to that.
Right. Okay. So that was an after feature that was built in based on the realities of society, effectively, and the workforce. Yeah.
And it just accelerated. I think that was already on the board to say, hey, let's just build the telemetry gathering from that, because you used to have to put Microsoft cloud MCAS for discovery, which you set up and you had to put an agent on the endpoints. Back in the
Oh,
day.
okay.
It used to be an
Before
agent
my
back
time.
in the day. Yeah, before your
Okay.
time. I'm dating I started working on this just after the acquisition of Adelon. Like, so I sort of know the product. Big shout out to Jared Popperman on the show, and Mike Costas taught me everything I need to know about MCAS.
Sweet.
Right.
Sweet.
So
And it's still your favorite. Still your favorite.
it's still
Yeah.
and I still call it MCAS. I will not call it Defender for Cloud Apps. I'm not going to do it.
Defender for Cloud Apps. Well, it is takes a little bit more energy the other way.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. More syllables. For
So
sure.
that's why if you ever want to sit down and get in the dirt with it, I got it all set up. I'll show you.
Sweet. Because honestly, when they pulled the plug on it, it was like the last day of my 14-day trial, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to go ahead and cancel that. So if you already got a lab going, I'll poke in your lab.
You can get the same type of effect. We got guests in the green room.
Yeah,
you can get the same type of effect by using another cloud provider, Box. They will give you a developer account which has full insight. Box, Dropbox, it doesn't matter. They're still cloud storage facilitated services, right? So Box will give you an enterprise developer license that you can play around with, and it'll translate to what you're doing in Google. Google used to give you a free one that allows you to do it, but I don't know what happened with that. And I just paid it $12 a month. I have a G Suite. I have a full Google environment. I just put everything in there, right?
Yeah.
So.
Copy that. Okay. Thank you for the offer for me to come and pollute your lab environment.
No, man. Andrew did that already. I still can't get all these exploits out of my lab.
I'm so happy I ran that.
It's like she's here, but she's not.
I know. Andrea's test script.
The ghost
Yeah, it's
of
basically
Andrea.
just like, let's load up every exploit possible into one script and like hammer. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, I'll tell you what I've been doing, and we'll go to Ross so we can get on
Sounds
with the show. I've been a salesperson all week. Oh, I was in Boston for the Boston Marathon.
Oh, that's right. Oh, I want to hear about that.
Pretty good. Didn't run the full marathon. I ran the 10K, the 5K, and the 1 mile. Yeah, they do have that. It's just not advertised, right? So there's those challenges, right? And they have a high school competition for the mile, girls and boys. There's some fast individuals. I don't know what these kids are eating. And they had an 800-meter challenge for high school girl and boy. That was pretty cool to watch them. So they got to run up under the huge finishing point. My organization was there. I think I sent some of the pictures. If I haven't, I will. You know, Boston Athletic Association community run in conjunction with Black Men Run Boston. Met the president of Fleet Feet. Met the president of New York Road Run Association. Met the vice president of Sam Adams. Got a lot of beer. He took me to the special tent, gave me a badge. They probably don't have any beer left. Got to see Boston from a non-work perspective. Generally, when I went for work, food was good. Met 2 peers, took them dinner, had fun, and I'm tired. You stay up all night drinking and partying. You still got to get up 5:36. You got 6. You got to be there, right? And it was pretty good. From a non-personal standpoint, battling back and forth with the PG AMA team. They seem to want to gang up on me about that whole thing. We're talking about, do you need ARC? And I say I can make it work without ARC. Well, that's not the point. But now
you're so smart.
You cannot install it. You cannot install the AMA agent on Linux without ARC. I tried it again. It will not work.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened within the last couple of months. I tried it. It'll look like it's working. It'll give you the dependency.
Yeah, we have some incentive for customers to do that.
Yeah, we do. So the product group called me of a sort on Teams. Said, hey, man, we don't want any beef. This is why we're doing this, right? Like, I thought they were going to kick me out of their PG channel on Teams because I keep alienating. But I said, just give me a good answer. So shout out to the AMA team, product group. If you're listening, I understand now. And it is needed, right? But don't say recommended, but I can still do it without, I can still get the agent on it without actually having an overlay on top. Now you have to have that overlay.
Well, because you're such good friends with them now, get them on the show sometime this summer. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I can definitely.
We'll ask them questions they can't answer or are not allowed to answer. So.
Well, that's always fun to do. Maybe we'll get some legit answers out of them as well.
Right. What are you doing, man?
I'm going to go very quick because my life is only one thing at the moment. As everybody kind of knows, it's just all the Azure OpenAI stuff.
What's AI?
AI? I don't know.
Actionable intelligence, actionable insights.
It's a new candy bar.
I like it.
Made from the same people that make Skittles, I think. Yeah, like
Skittles.
Skittles, or what do they call it? It's unicorn poop or something like that. AI.
AI is a Vegas term.
Yeah.
All in, baby. All in.
Yeah.
That's good.
But if you really want to know what I'm doing, just watch my blog because everything's going to be posted there. I found out today that MCAS, or Defender for Cloud Apps, is actually capturing the OpenAI stuff now, which it wasn't last week. So that's actually really good news because I've been struggling and suffering. I'm having to actually create actual apps so that I can get enough data to figure out how to monitor the API stream and stuff like that. So this really helps.
You should have just asked me.
Or I just ask Andrea to install something weird on my network and then be able to do that. So.
Yeah, I would. They just had to see and to find. Yeah, I sort of knew it was coming. I think it's on their roadmap by mistake.
Yeah.
You look at the roadmap. It may be.
Well, it already picks up OpenAI, but this is the first that it's picked up Azure OpenAI stuff.
So it will fire an impossible travel warning when Skynet tries to get into all the nuke bases across the world instantaneously.
No, all it does is it exposes it in the logs right now. That's it.
Let me ask a quick question. Let's get on to, I guess. OpenAI is friendly owned by Microsoft by the yearly contribution, right?
So we have invested in OpenAI to help push forward artificial intelligence, right? On the other side, so OpenAI is the public version of like ChatGPT and stuff like this, right?
Yeah.
We have our own implementation of it under the guardrails of Azure OpenAI, which to me is what I use because there's quite a bit of difference between the Wild West and an established Western town, if you want to call it that way. OpenAI and then Azure, because you have those guardrails through RBAC and you can control who has access and you can monitor things that you want to be able to monitor your users using this stuff. So
yeah, and so where I'm going with this line of question is that much easier to control the API landing points on the product that you own without changing it, because MCAS was notorious for changing their calls and would break certain products. You own it. Now I'll go ahead and detect it because I'm gonna have to worry about an open source person changing the API endpoints or something in front of it, right?
Good point.
So that's probably why they're doing it. And MCAS is one of the better products to be able to do that. Yeah. So I'm going to play with it a little bit now that you say it's in there. I need to get more technical, man. It seems like whenever I get really deep in the woods, I get pulled back into sales.
Yeah, you're a salesperson. Just accept it.
Yeah. I've seen your decks, Edward. They're not very deep.
No, they're just
Wow.
They have dollar signs on them. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. You're ganging up on me since Andrew's not here.
All right. So this is a special month. This is what we call MISA month here at the Microsoft Security Insights Show. We have invited, actually kind of handpicked by Maria Thompson, some of our partners as part of the Microsoft Intelligent Security Association to come on and talk about what they're up to, how they take advantage of MISA, and also leading up to RSA this year, which is in only a couple weeks. Today we have actually a company I'd like to talk about, which is Senserva, and we'll have them introduce themselves here in a second. But I think more than anything, a lot of people might actually recognize a couple of our guests from other places in terms of the history of this industry, right? From IT pros to security and things like that. People forget, I think, sometimes that patching is still part of security. So, go ahead and introduce yourselves, Mark, Jeff.
Sure. Mark Shavlik, founder and CEO of Senserva, cloud-focused security company. And what I did to start this company's group briefly on that is I thought, well, what's the opposite of patch? So it's serverless cloud computing, I guess. And I thought I'd start there, but I'll let Jeff introduce.
Okay. And I'm Jeff Kushner, the Chief Marketing Officer at Senserva. And so, like Rod has mentioned, I've been around the industry for longer than I like to think, but I can see things are really advancing with AI. So I have my fingers crossed. We'll see what happens.
Well, and that's pretty interesting. You say you've been around for quite a while, and I'm going to date myself as well. Mark, how long have we known each other? Can you? I hate to make you do math at a time like this.
Years.
Yeah, 20 years or probably more than that. You had a product I think people are most familiar with over the past 20 years that I think most every organization, probably those that were using things like System Center, Configuration Manager, SMS, stuff like that, utilized, which was, you go ahead and explain that.
Sure. So yeah, well, starting with Dave, who's actually in the audience too. Dave, he was at Microsoft, and I was there visiting, and Microsoft didn't have patch in those days, but there was patches out, and we would analyze and install patches. And David worked at Microsoft, and we ended up designing what became the WSUS data, and I worked with Dave's team on that, and we did HF NetCheck, a multi-threaded scanner, and then that became part of the Microsoft Baseline Security Analyzer, which end of life recently, but it ran like 10 years with no maintenance or anything. It just kept doing security, which is pretty nice. No recalls on it or anything. Then we did go into SMS, and all the stuff is still there. It's still in SMS. I did sell a company to VMware, and then it's now part of a different company, Avante, and
Oh, right.
it's still active. And it depends who you talk to, but through licensing deals, and about half the Windows servers are still protected by it. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, and that was initially written in my living room. So, and,
yeah, those are the good old days. We had regular jobs, and then we had to do all our little side gigs to create something wonderful, right? Yeah.
And little kids to raise and stuff. So it's busy times.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I can remember that product. You also ran, what I love about you and I love about the original company and also Senserva is kind of that community aspect. Patchmanagement.org, you all ran that for a long time as well.
Eric Schultz, you probably remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, he and others ran that. It was quite an adventure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that was all good stuff. And like I mentioned and alluded to a little bit earlier, I think a lot of people kind of forget these days when we talk about security. I think the really cool, sexy part of security, right, is being a cyber person or being an analyst or, I don't know, digging through logs, if you will, but and doing some automation. But and everybody's like, okay, here's the zero trust thing, right? We start with identity, but quite honestly, there was a time and a period in my life working in IT and stuff like that where the first thing someone would ask was, did you patch it? Right? You don't hear that much anymore. Do you have the most current patches applied?
well, here's how my insurance works for our cyber insurance. And you can't get cyber, if you don't get cyber, you don't get errors and omissions. So you kind of have to have it. If I can't show that I've installed all critical, this is from our insurance agent, who doesn't know any of these words, right? If I don't install all criticals in 2 weeks, it won't cover a breach that was caused by those criticals. So I wanted to ask, is that all products in the world? And how are you going to know that? HF NetCheck. And if they'll take my money, but if I can't show I'm patched,
Right.
for the 2-week window, they won't cover the breach. That's a big thing. That means that most people have zero coverage, but they accept you in and take your money. It's not going to pay out. And I don't blame the insurance companies necessarily for that.
Yeah.
But that's a high bar, I think. So I don't know what happens. We have logs and all that, and I mean, hopefully that's enough, and hopefully
We need that minimum standard. It's like fire prevention. It's like automobile prevention. It's like theft prevention. We need minimum. We can't just have everything. Oh, I just didn't do anything and I got insurance. Like,
So how does that play these days when in the past it was most organizations wouldn't patch until like 30 days, 60 days passed as part of the process? Because I think we've done at Microsoft a little bit better job, but at the same time on production systems deploying patches, you never know what could happen in respect to that.
Well, did it deploy, but also Microsoft doesn't support every patch that's on the network.
That's right.
And so you need third parties, patch my PC or whatever. And it's pretty hard because we work with people in the field. It's interesting because we're on here talking about the latest defenders and things like that, but the people who are on the line are still they can't get things always patched reliably yet. So that's the continuum of security. It's like 25 years.
Yeah.
More or less.
When we have one of our, and Mark, pleasure to meet you virtually in person. I think the second time I did something in Chat GPT or Bing, and it said, because Rod's like, who doesn't know Mark? So I typed in there, do I know Mark Shavlik? Mark Shavlik is the guy that promised you a beer at Ignite and did not follow through. Literally, that's what it said.
Oh,
I was like, nah, he's making up stuff.
That's the other Mark.
That's an old Mark. I probably did run into you at Ignite or one of those other things. But yeah, you have been, prominent and relevant in my server admin days since you were right, the patching and the installing the software, getting the patches done and all that other stuff. So yes. Yep. And good. We should have a separate show off topic a little bit about cyber insurance. Yes or no? That'd be a separate when we do one of our own days, and maybe we'll get a panel of people that are utilizing it. Maybe have you back on, Mark, to say, okay, it's one of those things like any other insurance. How do you prove value for it? It provides value when you need it, and if they're in the business of not paying you because of any little nuance, But
yeah,
sir, question for you: when you went away, did you? Was there any anxiety or little apprehension about, I guess the start about 10 years ago, I'm sure that AWS was before then, and then maybe Google's a little ahead of Azure. I can't tell who was born first. That when you saw the doom and gloom of infrastructure individuals saying everything's going to the cloud, we're going to lose our jobs. Majority of your business was on things that were on metal, that were in data centers and doing these things. How did you approach changing your mindset to say, oh, this is either a benefit, or it's just going to change the way I do business, or it's going to change the way people do business to get them ready to go to the cloud? What was your approach?
So the first thing, when cloud first came out, we did launch a cloud product, but it still did patching. That's kind of funny. But anyway, remember I would go talk to someone, and I was in the United Kingdom talking to a person there, and he said, you mean to tell me a password? I'm going to put a password between me and all the bad people? No, I'm never going to do that. And so the cloud's never going to take off. I said, well, you should probably learn the cloud. And I kind of ended it there. But at the time, I thought it was going to be a very rapid change where it would just, because it's really hard to secure on-premise environments still, right? That would just evaporate. And I think most of Microsoft's firepower is in the cloud, right? So it's a bit legacy. And I don't think it's super easy. But it just gets bigger, right? So now if we had ChatGPT, it's going to get bigger. And if you go back to the insurance, they're still fighting stuff from 25 years ago, and it's not solved. There's someone we work with, and a vendor, and the vendor said, "Oh, we do all these patches," but they don't do all the patches. They do like 15% of the patches, right? So it's still what I thought was going to end is still there. It's the same problem, and we just added in infinite complexity. And I do not think that the average admin has any understanding of how hard this is. And either they ignore it or check the secure score, which to me varies 68 to 72. It's kind of like a room temperature, ironically, but and they just don't know. And so it's a super big challenge. Right now, MFA is going to probably really help us in the cloud. And I think, I don't know where the people are going to move once everyone does MFA.
Yeah, you said something. I'm gonna steal from you. I'm gonna add a little bit to it. You said, secure scores like 68 to 70 depends, right? I want to. Maybe I am a salesperson. Secure scores like your thermostat. 68 to 75 is whatever's comfortable to you, right? I'm good at 65.
And that's also interesting because that number really kind of honestly, truly is subjective to the environment, the way that the environment is run. It's almost, I hate insurance by a risk score. It just doesn't sound, when you pay for insurance, you pay for insurance, right?
You pay for the unknown.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
But you have to do some due diligence.
that's totally off top. I want to stay on
right.
this breed company. So
There's a different company I talked to last week. I don't know if I should name them or not, but they're trying to take security assessments and insurance and mix it together, make it a positive.
Yeah.
So if I don't think they're public yet, but if you buy their service, I mean, it's cloaked, whatever. If you buy their service, they'll do audits, pen tests, and whatnot frequently. So it's like a huge value. I think they're going to do really well because they are. There's different levels of how insurance work, but they're a real insurance company, and then they're partnering with technical people, and that's where they're talking with us. But that's to me the win-win. I pay my whatever $5,000, whatever you pay for your insurance, but I'm getting a monthly. It's automated, but a monthly pen test, and it starts to get value. And now it's no longer a game of like gotcha where I didn't, I missed that patch. No, my guess is if I'm patching, I missed it by a week, the insurance is still going to help me, right? But I think that, but if they actually audited for me and said, hey, Mark, we don't have service, but if we had a server, it's out of compliance, you should fix it. That now it's starting to become a partner of ours, and with automation, and they can add a little bit to their price. I think the problem starts to get solved a little bit, but there's such a gap other than that because insurance companies are somewhat independent and they tend not to be super technical. So someone gives them this manifest, a technical manifest, and then attorneys probably review it, and then that becomes the policy. It's a big gap, but again, if the insurance companies can kind of close it a little bit, I think the problem, to me, that'd be a value,
Yeah.
It makes the insurance company seem like the external regulatory framework or compliance that you do, because if you're not mapping to something and you don't have any compulsion to be able to get the patches done, like and even those industries that are, supposed to map to a framework for compliancy, medical, HIPAA, SOX, GLB, GDPR, or whatever. And then if you're talking about frameworks, NIST, see, that makes it easier. But when you're a company and you don't map to that, having something like what you described, Mark, is hugely beneficial because it seems like they become your mapping framework.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not that hard to get patched enough where even when you get, for COVID, whatever, get inoculation, it's like 90%, right? That means 1 out of 10 people it has no effect on, but it's still really good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, so if I'm installing all the Microsoft criticals within 24 hours through automation that comes from Microsoft for free, I'm probably going to do pretty good versus not. So I think that here isn't that hard. Now, if you get into banking or government, you might not need to raise that bar and, more thorough on your patching, but going from 0 to that is a pretty big win.
Yeah, I agree. So if we get in our handy dandy hot tub time machine and go forward, and your company now, Senserva, sounds very sincere. Tell me about it.
Sure. So, I guess where we are, and this is through working by talking to a lot of people for time, is the technicians, the people who, like you were talking when this call first started, you're kind of on the edge of what's new from Microsoft, and the people like that tend not to have programmers available to do automation. And then if you start to need to get the data from APIs, Microsoft provides, most mature Microsoft products give really good data, but it's hard to find and you have to correlate. It's very difficult. So what happens is they can only go so far and they can't get all the data they really need. So that's where we come in. So our team will work with them and kind of detail what they need, and Agile, we're programmers, so Agile programming, you go like phase by phase. So we start with something about a weekly call. We start to automate. You automate Intune, we automate Defenders. We're automating different things, analysis of usage of our customers properly using these end users properly. These are MSSPs, I should be clear too. That's we work mostly with MSSPs. So when I say that's our customer, then their customers are end users. So Anyway, if there's a big, if you call it a gap, there's an automation gap between where Microsoft stops, because Microsoft can't be all things to all people. Every MSP wants to make a more unique offering. They're all very different what they focus on. It's really quite interesting. And so then they have the really smart people like yourselves who know how to use the products, but they're doing everything by hand. It's not really repeatable. And then they get stuck because, again, they can't get everything they need, especially cross-referencing data. And so that's when we come in and we write that code. And then we have an engine that installs with a template in their tenants. And it runs forever. It's low load. So it's scalable, and it just gathers that data and puts it into the log analytics workspace. And then they can use KQL if they want. But then we've learned that a lot of people don't really know KQL. Now, I did buy Rod's book for MMS, but that's a high bar for a lot of. They definitely don't want to code, but KQL is worse in coding, I think, as far as just one opinion. But it's really hard.
I tell you what, I like this guy. I like it. He tells it how it is.
So he doesn't even do that anymore, so it's okay. He's a big AI guy now. So.
Yeah. KQL, what's that?
There you go.
So,
you know, you're gonna continue. You're making some good points, man.
Oh, so we put it in there, and now we to make really nice, robust reports with KQL. It compounds, and it's hard to do. It's magic to me when I see someone on the phone do this and this, and they can see all the trends in the data. That's definitely the A team right there, right? I mean, that's a reference to the 70s. Sorry, but
I love it. It's good. Well, it goes along with the shirt. You have to step back for a second. So yeah, there you go. There you go.
Nice.
There you go.
Okay, there's music playing too, and then I got my button. Everything's backwards. It says "Go MISA."
Oh,
sweet.
That's awesome.
I'm all ready to go. It's Kitsch, whatever that's called.
I have my MISA pin right here. So I don't know if you see it.
That was too small, so I had these printed in the sensor. Anyhow, I was just back to that KQL gap. So I thought if we produce this nice clean data, it's all merged together, different levels of complexity, very simple high level to all these joins, all the data clean, people still weren't comfortable. And someone told me once on a call, these are good, successful security people. I would use Sentinel if it didn't have KQL. So, okay. Anyhow, but so we ended up making a UI that reads into KQL and makes a web page of it, because then we can do that work for them. But also we can then do a drill down with a lot of the notebooks and things. It's a little harder to go multiple levels, like, oh, click, 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 and you get more and more data on some particular topic of interest. Yeah. So we just do that for people, and so people
are gonna be shocked when I say this, but you know what that reminds me of, and I also know that you were affiliated a little bit for a little while with Splunk, right? Be able to kind of click, 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 drill down type of situation.
Yeah, Phantom Cyber. But yeah, so we have that, and that tends to be custom right now. Although how software usually works, at least for me, we always have a high level, even patch services. We license that to, and that's why we're an SMS, whatever it's called, not config manager, whatever, in VMware and in BMC, all these different things. Because I've always liked to work with customers. I used to work at Microsoft too, and I was their OEM team, so I learned the power of that. How much more powerful in Microsoft to build on partners, especially partners like MISA, but like Senserva and MISA. But but anyway, so we've always had this partnership model. But then, so you work with partners, you kind of do somewhat one-offs with them, and then that becomes a product. That makes real products. That's why patching was so successful, because it did one thing really, really well, and it did what people needed, right? You know how I started that. I was an admin and learning all this stuff, and then I heard Bill Gates speak. You know, because patches came out in like 1997. The first patch came out, it was like some Excel thing or something, and it was kind of ignored. But I heard Bill Gates say, you know, we've got this little tool. We'll patch one computer. And I was at an event at the Redmond Center there. One computer. what if we did that same concept and we did all of the computers, right? And that's how it was born. But
All the computers.
All the computers.
and, you know, we pushed out remediation after a while. I was kind of against it because it's a big thing to remediate someone's computer because you can break them. But I remember
That never happens, Mark. Come on.
not anymore.
Yeah.
And the guy goes, some guy sends me a text or whatever. He says, I pushed all patches to 1,000 servers. It worked! Exclamation point. Oh, people are actually going to buy this product and do that. There is a market. Because we would do is if our servers went down, it's about $3 million an hour for downtime. So we didn't really want to just shut them all down, right? It's a very holy thing, and you do this, and you never, right? But hey, I push all patches to all my servers, whatever. But that's how products come into being. Is you work with the field, like people like yourself, and then you start to automate, and then that becomes a product. So that's kind of our model. So it repeats. What we haven't seen yet is we haven't, if you think of a circle, we haven't come back yet. It's like every time we work with someone, it's something different. So we're going this way, and I want us to circle back because that's when we can really get the wheel turn. I guess it's a wheel analogy. It'll really spin faster because now we're repeating. But the MSP market's so diverse that when they get stuck, and they're not going to call us if they're not stuck, they get stuck in all these different things. It's quite interesting.
Well, that is interesting when you think about it. I mean, obviously, all the needs and requirements are different, whether it's an enterprise or an MSSP, right? It sounds like you've not at least been able to come back and create some repeatable template or something that everyone else can use because you're still, getting business. I guess that's not a bad thing, right?
Well, we have some nice stuff for conditional access where we do what if, the what if in conditional access, you put one person in it and it can be bugs for you if it's not working right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't do it for all your users, right? So we wrote what if for all your users. But I don't think the market's there yet for things like that. They're just not ready for that yet. The market needs things to be a little more helpful than these things. So we've somewhat switched our model a little bit as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think the last time you and I were together was at RSA last year, right? My favorite hotel in the world, just because it's from a 1970s TV show, or was it 80s, early 80s, maybe? I'm not sure.
Right?
Yeah, the hotel.
That's where Steve Austin first met the Bionic Woman.
I didn't know. Is that no? Okay? I was like, man, there's a bit of trivia I didn't know. You were gonna. Yeah. I think we had breakfast like every day during RSA last year. So you were at RSA last year, were part of the MISA event, the party. I think you're also nominated for one of the awards last year as well.
Yep. Innovator of the Year.
Yep.
Nice. Congrats.
So I thought it was sort of interesting to find that I guess you're just following me around because you and I were together at RSA last year at this time. In about 2 weeks, you and I are going to be together again, but not at RSA. Neither one of us are going to RSA this year. We've opted to do something a little bit different.
Well, you mentioned over a year ago that you like this MMS. It used to be MMS from Microsoft, but now I think Microsoft left the show, so it's now the Midwest Management Summit.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you liked it, so that made me think about it. Of course, I would never would have gone if you didn't mention it, right? Because and now we're excited to go. We've lined up a number of meetings. It's all Microsoft. It's all management, right?
Okay.
Microsoft management. So it's definitely in our wheelhouse. It will not be MSSP, so it's going to be interesting for us to immerse with prominently non-security people who are managing stuff.
Yeah.
But everyone who manages anything needs to do security now, right? How do you not do it unless you have two vendors or 4 vendors that you? So I think it'd be some good conversations. But RSA, even last year, we spent the whole time in the Microsoft area, was in another building, remember? Like in an old mall.
Yeah.
And we spent the whole time there, took all the classes, and we kind of hung out. I don't know if we're supposed to, but we kind of didn't leave. I took the tour a second time because someone else came and the guy goes, "You were here, right?" He remembered me from like 2 days. I said, No, I'm not going to get any of your free stuff. I just want to take this. And, so we ended up going there a lot. And and talk to you there. And for me, at least, we're going to have a lot more better conference. We had better conversations at the MISA event in December with people, a smaller group, you know. But that's, to me, it's more real business. I hate to say it, for us. You know, and whenever I went to RSM for many years, I would just go sit at the Microsoft booth, and then this time I sat at the Microsoft big giant booth in another building.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna try something different. Although I don't know very much about so many Microsoft products, that it is gonna be harder for me. But we do have the MISA training, which helps. But I would sit there and talk to the product managers at that booth for a long time, and they'll whiteboard and tell me everything, you know, right? Nothing special with MISA there. So anybody can do it on the floor. And then another group across the way with CrowdStrike was across the way and knowing everyone. I don't remember that, but that'll get edited out, right? Of this when it goes.
No, it's fine.
That's fine. You know, right.
They kicked me out of their booth. I was trying to get one of their little action. I finally got an action figure. Somebody got one for me.
You want those big giant ones and wheel it out of there.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, you really learn a lot just talking to the Microsoft people. So there's never it's not easy to pick one or the other, to be honest. For us, the cost is about the same. And this year, MISA is at the hotel. The MISA meeting is at the hotel.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. My favorite hotel.
Yeah. And which I think it's $900 a night if you get the discount.
Hey, so Mark, with the new company, you were talking about MSSPs, you're talking about end users, you're going to go to this conference and partners and stuff like that. Where is the majority of your user base? Are you selling direct to the client, or the MSSPs your main pass through to be able to get your solution to the customers that need it?
So we believe that for us right now, when we're trying to be leading edge wherever in the cloud security, we tried a lot of different things, right? Where we find a market is the MSSPs that hired really smart people. They know the Microsoft stuff cold. They know the latest from Microsoft like you wouldn't believe. They know the data. They can read the data. And our job is really all about data. You have to really like reading JSON. And if you ever build templates, you know, like for installing, if you can do that, you can do anything. But I mean, you have to really know this stuff. So that's where we find our market. And they reach out to us via LinkedIn, or people know me, or we have an outbound team. They come to us with the impossible problem. And then, you know, it's a data problem. Like, we can't find this data. Can you find it, kind of thing. So we're at the very edge. And I think for us right now, that's where the market is. What I'd like to do is, you know, you push a button, like Sentinel I put out has you push a button, you get a nicer Sentinel. And you push a button, you get security defaults, right? Those are, I mean, I'm not an expert on those things, but those are nice things. You push a button, you get something. That's what we need. And whenever you got all the smartest people in the world having to drive everything off their brains and scripts that they have, you know, that's a world that needs automation, right? So we have to start there. Remember, there's people we talk to that don't know KQL or think that the security score is all they need. They're not going to buy anything from us. They're probably not going to buy anything from Microsoft, right? Where the MSSP and MSPs who know they have to do security also work with us. We need to find people who are driving the industry. That's where we're finding, because otherwise they just either don't have time or they don't see the problem. You know, it took me a long time to learn, us, not just me, our team, to learn this stuff. And we talked to someone last week from AWS background. They can get everything we can get in 5 minutes. You can't get this stuff in 5 minutes. It's not documented. And if it is documented, it's only partially documented, and it's changing. You can't get that. And you have to cross-reference with APIs that aren't documented to get all the data you want. You have to dig through a bunch. It's not 5 minutes, right? But it looks like it's 5 minutes. So either they don't understand the depth, the challenge of going through all this data, or a different person was on a board, and at the board level, they think, well, we're in the cloud, we're secure, we don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. So, you know, you've got business drivers too that are unfavorable. So I think, at least from a cloud perspective, I think we would, I hate to say this, I know it's patch people on here. I think it's a better market selling patch than high-end automation of cloud security for, at least for a third party. That's why we have to seek out these leading people that know there's a problem and automate what they have. And then over the next, say, probably 2 years, whatever, get to that push button. And one challenge is that Microsoft's always changing things. So it's not static, you know, and it used to be we had a server at a certain version number, and we could support that version number, and then another version runs from Microsoft, and we can say, well, in 6 months, we're going to support that or whatever. It's not that way anymore. So, and fixes can go out in 4 hours after they're reported, things like that. So it's a challenge. And then the depth of what you need to know is really challenging too. So anyway, I don't know if that's all kind of just random ramblings here from me, but
No, very, very, very honest, Discord, because I'm sure there are other product vendors that are struggling, but are too afraid or too proud to say, hey, it's a struggle keeping up when you are sort of retooling, reselling with the vendor that is one of the core things that makes your product work, right? Or the thing you support. And the Microsoft train does not wait. It pulls off on time, right? And sometimes it does not stop when it's supposed to stop.
and I'll read that from Bradley there. Also, we're always focused on enhancing Microsoft, right? How would you come in this market and replace Microsoft and Azure Cloud? I mean, I don't know how you could. Of their own MSP tooling.
Well, that's been a thing that a lot of partners have said, that you're innovating us out of margin and market, right? But I do believe it is not a purposeful thing. It is just they're doing more, and there's always going to be gaps. You said it. Microsoft is not the be all, and it's not for everybody, right? It doesn't solve every solution. And I don't think the company's mission set is to do that. So there's always opportunities for those who will look at it. At the same time, compete and utilize the technology. I don't think it's a risk to put all in on a provider that can provide as much of the stuff you need to be able to run a core business. Like some people would say, a VAR would say something totally different. I need to sell everything, not be able to live, I need to hedge what's working and what's not, be able to not be in the bed with one vendor. But if you really focus on one vendor, you get really good at that vendor, and that vendor recognizes you, right? And you get access to the goodies, right? You get invited to stuff, right?
You get invited to this?
You get invited. There you go. Get that man some swag. Send him a KQL cup to the house with some KQL coffee.
I feel a little bad. We're just letting Jeff sit over there by himself, just staring into space a little bit.
Jeff is going to RSA, and he is attending the Sentinel event too. So.
Oh, good. You'll see all my buddies at RSA this year that I won't get to see in person, but that's okay.
Well, Jeff, we're not ignoring you, sir. Your title said marketing and all that, and I'm like, yeah,
That's okay. Mark's the real star of the show.
Yeah, come in and provide coverage. Well, let me ask you a question, Jeff, since you're there.
Yeah.
How is the marketing of this solution? Is it a lot of education first, and then showing the value? How do you make the reception and the acceptance of your product? Customers say, you know what, I think we do need that. And the second part of that question, who are your competitors, if you have any?
Well, I think I'll start with that first. I think, as always, that there always are competitors, but a lot of them fall into, homegrown solutions, spreadsheets, same old, same old. I think a lot of things just have not changed over time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They say some things never change, and I don't think that they have. Is people have all these different tools, they're trying to make them work together, like Mark said. Is I think with our solution is that it brings some of the pieces together to make it easier for customers to determine where do they stand, and the building in some of the automation, putting the information back into the logs allows a lot more versatility with what you could potentially use the information for, whether it's alerting, whether it's getting other information maybe that we don't get that is important to others. And so I think in just regards into the ecosystem is it adds another element to simplify figuring out where you stand from a security standpoint. And I kind of look at it from, from the Intune part to figuring out, what assets do you have, which is always a moving target, and then determining are those assets vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that literally the thing that we've been trying to come up with a solution since the beginning of the time? Inventory your assets, and assets are everything, right? Your identity, your devices, your user accounts, everything that you have as part of your purview of that environment, you need to inventory. It's constantly changing, obviously, but that's one of the first discussions I have with customers that want to use a SIEM or a SIM. Do you know what you have? Right? And most of them are like, no, I don't. Or they'll say they're 100% sure they do, and then I'll point something out, this server in the corner that's probably been sitting there for 10 years, right?
Yeah, I mean, how can you protect what you don't know you have? And now with all these endpoints that are not necessarily laptops and even phones, now IoT devices, now you have so many different endpoints that you need to protect, and people are bringing them in, connecting to your wireless, connecting them with physical cable. It's still a tremendous challenge.
It's funny you bring that up. I was just talking with somebody today, and a Canadian public sector customer, they're saying one of their biggest areas right now is trying to figure out BYOD access, because they have tens of thousands of individuals. I'm not going to get any more specific than that they're just not going to ship laptops to because they're temporary or they're seasonal, things like that. And they need these individuals to come in with BYOD because they just don't have the budget to be able to supply everybody with managed devices, right? Completely managed devices. And so they've got to get their strategy down where they can have access to sometimes sensitive information, different levels of it, with BYOD. And that's a major focus of their zero trust strategy right now. So managing and being able to trust, air quotes, these devices and manage them enough so that you have assurance is extremely top of mind right now.
It is. I don't know the customer on that, Brody, but I'll raise my hand and just say this. Not to be just charitable, but that seems like a very old mindset of trying to fix a old new problem with an old way of thinking. So you're still thinking physical. Why are they using Azure Virtual Desktop? Why is Citrix not a consideration?
Or cloud PCs, yeah.
Cloud PCs. I mean, you got to get some fresh thinking to say, if a person needs to bring their own device, their device can be, it'll have a minimum compliance to be able to get on the network. You don't even need that.
No.
Yeah, you connect in. So they need better consulting outside of salespeople that are coming in.
Right. Well, they need assurance that no one can break out of the virtualized environment, right? They need assurance that if you're connecting to that Azure Virtual Desktop or whatever that cloud PC is, that you can't break that barrier and exfiltrate data to the actual endpoint you're using. And it's critical for this customer, right?
And there are lots of insurance, whether it be the Citrix, whether it be Microsoft solution, that it containerizes that, and the person that could figure out how were beyond your skill set anyway, right? That was malicious intent. Now, there's always some stuff that accidents happen. Someone actually clicked, oh wow, I didn't know I could just cut and paste between my virtual desktop and put it here. When did that get turned on, right?
Well, a cloud PC is managed just like any other device. You can use Intune or any other policies to manage it.
Yeah. So.
I think that you bring up a good point though, is we've really advanced a lot with secure web gateways and such, that you have other gates that we didn't have in the past that now at the application layer or at the entitlement layer you can block somebody, you can set permission, so now you have a whole nother layer of where you can protect, right? And so I think you're absolutely right in regards to that. And I think that the other thing is that I was going to bring up is what is enough, right?
Mm.
I mean,
Is even with standards, right? Is everybody implements standards, but is it A, B, C, D, or E? And they never implement them out of the box. They always change something, which makes it hard to maintain. And you kind of wonder why it's so difficult to manage.
Fair.
true. I had an old thing that I used to do when we were able to go on stage. You could talk, you present. So you do something to become the bad guy at the very beginning of the person that doesn't know, and then you win the crowd back. It's a risky move, but I used to say this:
That's a sales move right there.
Azure,
He's a sales guy.
AWS, and Google Cloud are unbreakable. They're unhackable until you start putting workloads in it.
So
Once you start putting
using them.
workloads in it, all bets are off, right?
You can't
I
break
can
into
read
a building
headlines.
with
No
no
one's
doors.
ever really broken
Yeah.
my tenant subscription. That I just
I think the other thing too is I think there's still, unfortunately, a lot of people, they just don't understand the shared responsibility model.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They
bingo.
think they go to the
Classic.
cloud and they're covered for everything.
Yeah.
Classic.
And I've heard someone actually say that, Jeff. Well, I don't need cyber insurance. I'm in the cloud.
Yeah. Maybe that's because there's so many people that they save something in the cloud and they can't find it for 10 years. They're like, what's in the cloud?
Yeah, it's in the cloud. It'll eventually come back.
Yeah.
Everything's
We'll find it.
it'll come
We'll
back.
find it.
Yeah. So what's the future for you, Jeff, Mark, and David? I mean, what do you want to go conquer next? Or how do you conquer? Is once again the salespeople. How do you want to go out and make the world better through what you're offering your customers and the people out there? What's next?
So two things, I guess. The more near term one is services that build on Microsoft that the MSPs can sell and get more revenue, because we can help them maybe save a little bit of money here and there, but if we can help increase revenue and still ride on the Microsoft wave, that's a big win. But also, and this is a bit bigger of a project because it's like it's more automation, because I would like to have less sophisticated people be able to use all the Microsoft products, right? And it's not going to be all of them. It'll be some of them, because if there's just too many, right? So it'd be Purview and Defenders. I just said Purview, Brody, for you, but I don't know if
That's all I do.
if we got like the Defenders and Sentinel working well, where the person who didn't understand KQL and didn't want to learn it could be successful with it, that's a huge win for us. So we can get there. We can get there. We can get there reasonably quickly. We have to learn what people do, and we're learning that every day. Once we know what people do, then we can automate it pretty quickly. It's not a coding exercise; it's knowing what to code exercise. So I think that's a big win for us.
Mm-hmm.
And then the super smart people way in the edge, they're always going to have the latest in Microsoft. They know the product cold. They don't really need us unless there's a little data missing here or there. That's not a lot of automation. It is automation, but we can get, if you think of a bell-shaped curve, that's way on the right side of the curve where it really smooths out. We want to pull back into that. Beyond that, so that big curve, if you're in the middle of that curve, that's like all the Microsoft 365 people, whatever. If we could tap into that and automate, then that'd be a massive win for us. We can't do that until we know exactly what's needed. So, working on the right side, if you will, of all these, edgy people teaches us how to go back to the middle. So that's helpful. So that's like our 2.0 is that. And we're gathering up. I mentioned earlier how every customer is a little different. So we've had to modify what we do a little differently. Well, we are sooner or later going to reach the end of that, right? And we're almost there. Then that becomes the foundation for this is what the market needs, because these people are really smart and they're using it to automate that. So maybe one person needs 50 reports for Intune because they're really another person just needs to say, is it a green or a red or yellow, right?
I heard a customer today. It's like, just tell me what the status is, right? Without having me dig too deep. Am I good or am I not good? Or am I yellow? You know, we drive that way, green, yellow, red, right?
And then what happens when it's red? And then you have to be able to help them.
Yes.
And that's what we have to. Even when it's yellow, we got to say, look, there's a trend. You know, whatever. There's some trend. We have to be able to drill deep and help them solve that problem. And that's, you know, we're asked to do that a lot of times, digging through the data, because the MSSP can't necessarily fix it. The customer, and that's all they do all day is fix things, right? The customer may not have that. They may add users in, set up printers, do tech support. Oh yeah, I got to go secure Office 365, right? So that's going to be the bigger challenge, is when it doesn't work. So some of the thoughts there would be, at that point, it flips to one of our partners, where if it turns red, you get like something goes on your calendar. You know, they're helping you the next day. Because I don't think automation will ever, you know, we're going to get field goals, not touchdowns, and it's still going to be a win. And then we bring the expert.
Many games have been made of field goals and penalty shots.
Yes, it's a penalty shot.
That is the life of a Cincinnati Bengal, by the way. We win by 1 point every game.
Yeah, and you know, I love when something goes red, because I'm sitting here putting in my head like, yeah, it's really just a traffic light. Green, you let the customer know, so you're giving them confidence. You get a yellow, something they may not know, so you give them information. And if it goes red, something's bad, you give them help.
It's more like your car. If something goes red on your dash,
I just put tape over it.
Put tape over it. You keep going as long as you can. But
that red flashing light means nothing.
It's a suggestion to put oil in.
Well, don't worry about it. The Uber driver doesn't even put tape over it.
They don't. Yeah.
They just drive.
They just drive. Well,
that's how they get bigger tips.
So I in the interest of time and respecting everyone's time and everything, this has been hugely informative. I always wondered where you had gone, Mark. I don't think you ever went anywhere. I just think I went to a different place, started working stuff. But it's good. I've been doing this a long time too. I've ran into Rod back in the day. I'm not a young chicken. You know, I learned DR DOS. You know, I had a V20 processor, 286. I thought the biggest thing was, oh man, my computer has a math coprocessor, right? So I'm really good to go. And you guys bowed me up that even though we're some of the legacy and some of the old heads, as they say, we still have value in this world, because while technology is good and the people are coming in are much more talented than we are, these young people, they lack the ability to pivot when something isn't scripted out for them. Like I can troubleshoot a problem that I've had nothing with, but go about going like, oh yeah, this is sort of similar to this. And so that's why we still have value as, you know, advisors and doers and everything else, right? So I'm still having fun doing what I do. And thank you for coming on the show. I mean, it's a pleasure to have some luminaries come on the show. That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Well, apparently, Senserva will be split next week, right? So Jeff's going to be at RSA. Everybody can find Jeff. We'll make sure that people know what he looks like. And then Mark will be with me the week after, right? MMS, I think. I popped it in there just a second ago. It's April 30th to May 4th. And that's amazing event. Yeah, it is focused on, and I'm like you, Mark. It is focused and has been focused since the beginning of time on managing devices. But my role there is to go in and talk security, because it is, people don't realize how easy of a pivot it is to go from managing devices, looking at those logs, to troubleshoot, looking at those logs for security purposes. It's a really easy career migration, really easy career pivot for those people. So that's my job there, is just to talk about that stuff. And really,
you can probably focus. You go there and they have a very limited menu, but everything's outstanding, tasty. Yeah. You go to RSA, it's like eating at a Cheesecake Factory. Like, wow. Everybody wants you to come over and get a sample. You want a sample?
Cheesecake. I like cheesecake.
I love cheesecake. I don't like Cheesecake Factory. I love cheesecake. One of my vices.
Especially when they engage you to come in their booth and they don't even know what, they don't even know what they're talking about themselves. And, they're asking, well, what are your problems? It's like, well, where do I start?
You're right about that. I haven't been RSA in a decade. So, but it's okay. I get the readout from people that go, that come back, right? I'm more interested in the swag they bring back rather than what's there most of the time, right?
Well,
You
why
got
do you
something.
think I go?
You're going to make sure nobody badmouth you guys while you guys are MOA. That's what it is.
Well, that too.
Yeah, there you go. Nobody's
Where's
telling.
that Mark guy? Yeah.
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 Well, everybody, we're going to close out, and I really, really appreciate you guys coming on. I really appreciate Rod using his, connections to get you guys to come on. We like for you guys to come on sometime in the future as things change and you do certain things. You have an outlet here. If you want
Insurance.
to put it out there. Yeah. We may get Mark to sit on our cyber insurance panel when we have this discussion. It's going to get heated. I promise you, because the people that have it are going to take the side. Well, you're telling me I'm done for having it. I'm not saying that. I'm debating, do you need it? Right? But I like causing trouble. So there you go.
It is just, I know we're closing, but for my cyber, I said, well, I don't want it then. I can't prove it. Why would I pay for it? We can't get your E&O insurance. And that's like $1 million coverage for like $2,000. Airs and emissions. I mean, you kind of have to, that's like a no-brainer insurance, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they tied it together, and I probably could have fought that, but whatever. It's life. Right?